Ah, hey everyone, Eric Horst here with another live training cafe. It's been a few weeks. I've been traveling, and so instead of doing these every other week, kind of missed a week, and so it's been 3 weeks since we last met like this. And if you're new to Training Cafe, we try to do these every other Monday. My goal is to share my over 40 years of climbing experience, decades of coaching experience, talk about all things climbing performance, and answer some of your questions, and to some degree be topic driven. A big topic today we're going to get to is perhaps the world's hardest boulder problem, or second hardest. We'll talk a bit about Daniel Wood's big first ascent in the desert here, and hopefully give you some actionable items to help you take your climbing to the next level. So let's get rolling. Of course, this is Training Cafe, which means we combine talk of training and climbing with our favorite beverage, coffee. Let's sip together, commune over coffee, talk climbing. Kind of a global toast to our love for climbing. Let's do it. That is good. And if you saw my introductory clip on Instagram, I'm actually on a bit of a climbing trip now. I'm in the desert, I guess kind of east edge of the Mojave Desert here in St. George, Utah, doing some limestone climbing and putting in a lot of long work days as well. And I've been really looking forward to doing another Training Cafe and talking about the process of doing a hardest ever ascent, and specifically Daniel Wood's investing a good part of 5 months of his life into one boulder problem. One 15-foot boulder problem is a pretty amazing thing, and I'm so psyched that he sent it just a few days ago. And I guess if you've been watching Training Cafe, you know that I often do a shout out. And so absolutely, this shout out has to go to Daniel Woods for just going all in on this problem. It would have been so easy to walk away. I'm sure any given day that he didn't send the boulder over that 5-month period, it would have been so easy to walk away and say, let's come back to it next season. And, the heat has been building here in recent weeks. It's getting really late in the season to climb on small holds in the desert and to boulder hard. It might have been, when he sent it, the last day that it could have been done, because, it's about 90 degrees in the desert now. Here in St. George, it got up near 90 degrees the last 2 days. And in Vegas, Red Rock area is pretty similar to where I'm at here, just a few hours away in St. George, Utah. So for him to get it done kind of at the last minute, the last opportunity, is quite wonderful. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the boulder problem Sleepwalker is a V17 put up by Jimmy Webb a few years ago, and it's become kind of one of the classic Red Rock Canyon boulders, hard boulders to do, graded V16. So that makes it one of the hardest boulders in the United States. There are only a handful of boulders of that grade. And it's gotten quite a lot of action the last 12 months with numerous repeats. I guess some people wondering, could it be on the soft end of V16? I mean, when you watch a video of Drew Ruana doing it, or a handful of other climbers doing it, or Daniel doing it many times, the regular Sleepwalker, it looks doable. To someone viewing it, you might say, that's not V16, or I could do that. But I've seen the boulder firsthand. My sons have been there when my older son Cameron was there to witness and work it with Drew Ruana last winter. And trust me, it's legit V16. And, just getting your feet off the ground into the start of the regular Sleepwalker is extremely strenuous, and core strength is essential, extreme, world-class core strength is essential. And then, the rest of the boulder, of course, so hard. Very, very powerful, and some low probability moves mixed in, certainly makes it V16. And so I don't think you're going to see Sleepwalker ever get downgraded. But what Daniel then kind of came up with is, let's do a sit start to Sleepwalker that adds in another boulder problem estimated around V13 by itself. So you're climbing a V13 into that strenuous start of Sleepwalker, and then having to climb the Sleepwalker V16, exit over the top of the boulder. And so it's pretty easy to see how that would take it to another level. And if there's any debate on the V17 grade, Daniel Woods is perhaps the world's most accomplished boulder, or one of the, 2 or 3 best boulders in the world. You might say best, perhaps right now, wouldn't be an understatement. And so for him to take so long, when he started working on the sit start to Sleepwalker, you had to wonder whether it would go down quickly. And if so, then maybe that would open the door to speculation. Maybe it's only, hard V16. But the fact it took him this long, he first, dabbled on it, I guess, 5 months ago. And then the last 3 months, January, February, March, dedicated his life to it, basically did no other bouldering other than Sleepwalker. So very specific training on the boulder, and just, having his brain fully immersed into this project. And as Daniel put it in some of his Instagram posts and in some of the write-ups, kind of the insanity of it all. Imagine the head games of just focusing your life on a 15 or 20 foot span of rock, for all of those 3 months, having to go to sleep at night and think about, and, go from maybe being psyched that it's like imminent to send, to then having those doubts about, maybe it's not going to happen. And, that's the beauty of climbing, is how relatable it is to anybody, whether you're bouldering V5 as your limit project, or me as a route climber. My route climbing limit is 513, 8A, thereabouts. 8A plus is really my best recently at my advanced age. And so when I'm projecting, it's the same thoughts, the same process as what Daniel went through. We can kind of relate to it, though I've never worked on anything 3 months and don't think I could handle that level of insanity and commitment. I have too little of my climbing life left, perhaps, to invest 3 months into one route. But, Daniel's a pro climber. He's a pro's pro. And, that's kind of what you might say he's getting paid for. In my opinion, not paid enough. These pro climbers, commit so much time and effort into their, love and their job. And unfortunately, it's not professional football or professional baseball or golf, where they're making what they should be as being the best or one of the best in the world. But that's a whole other topic. It's just amazing, when these climbers, Megos on bibliography, Atamandra, silence, those are major commitments. And all the while, the outcome is unknown. And right up until they clip the chains or top the boulder, the outcome is unknown. And, that battle with doubt in your mind. I had it yesterday, a mini project, a 7C plus I was working on in the Utah Hills. And I got really close to doing it on my second or third go, but it was kind of a complex, slippery sequence through a top bulge. I kind of punted a couple of times, and, optimistically, I'm like, oh, I got this thing. I'm that close, but on the other side, that doubt is like, oh, geez, how many more goes is it going to take until things fall in place. And so it comes down to trusting the process. Daniel Woods put up a boulder in Bishop several years ago called The Process. It might have been the first V16 in North America, because this is a process that you go through when you're projecting. And it's kind of something very unique to climbing at your limit. If you really commit to something for several days or weeks or months, going through that process, it involves not just the climbing, but then the training and the rest day work and the nutrition and just staying motivated and staying psyched. That is the process that is so uniquely climbing. And I guess in terms of the main topic for today's video, I wanted just to talk a little bit about the nutrition side of things. And one thing about the process of projecting routes, training for routes, game day nutrition, rest day nutrition, what you do with your time on rest days, all of those things, it's highly personalized. I'm, as a coach, always trying to stress that, there is no cookie cutter approach to climbing. Early on, a beginner climber, the cookie cutter approach is to climb a lot, climb 3-4 days per week, because climbing is a skill sport. You need to learn to climb. But the more advanced you become, and as you accumulate experience, and then start to come up against physical limitations or mental limitations, that is where things need to become increasingly personalized. Each and every climbing season, your training, your approach to things, your mental training, your nutrition needs to be more and more personalized, because we each have different, genetics at, obviously at play, that affect training and recovery and nutrition. Mentally, we're all come from a little different place based on our life experience and past sports experience, and just where we're at in terms of what kind of project we would get on and how long we're willing to commit. With the rest of our life, most of us don't have 3 months to dedicate to camping in the desert and living in the desert, working a boulder at our limit. That's more the stuff of pro climbers to have that kind of time available, and the rest of us have to pay the bills and have families and jobs and school and such, and so that's again where everything needs to be more personalized and nuanced as you progress in the sport. But specifically, let's talk about kind of the game day diet, and this is going to be a little more tailored to more advanced climbers. Again, if you're a recreational climber going out and climbing on a Saturday for fun, you need to make sure you drink enough water and have a decent breakfast with some carbohydrate and protein, and snack throughout the day and have a nice evening meal. And if you're a recreational climber, that pretty much covers it. But the more advanced you are, the more important performance is to you. As you're getting higher and higher in the grade level and closer to your genetic limitations, every little bit counts. Nuance is a word I use all the time when it comes to high level training and nutrition and performance. That very fine nuance is the difference at the very highest levels, and when you're near your limit. And so nuancing your training, nuancing your rest and recovery, nuancing your diet and nutrition. And again, it has to be personalized, because what is the ideal game day nutrition for Eric Horst won't be quite the same as Daniel Woods or you. For instance, what we drink when we're at the Crags. I'm, for the most part, someone that early in the day, I drink water with Endurex mixed into it, which is a PhysiVantage product that has citrulline malate and beetroot extract that helps support the oxidative system and circulation. And there's good research that shows that it helps with intermittent sprint sports and recovery between intense efforts. All those things would be very valuable for a boulderer and a climber. And so I drink that kind of the first half of the day to kind of prime my body for performance. And then as the day wears on, I'm drinking more just plain water to stay hydrated. You don't need massive amounts of water, especially if you're climbing in the shade and climbing in cool conditions. 2 quarts, 2 liters might be enough. If you're climbing in the sun and sweating a lot on high temperatures and long days, you might need double that amount. You might need 3 or 4 quarts or liters. So again, that has to be adjusted for what type of climbing and where you're climbing and how long you're climbing and how much you're sweating and such. And in terms of foods, again, some people do better with kind of an empty belly that makes them feel lighter, not having any concerns about digestion or indigestion while they're climbing. There's nothing worse than being gassy or having to go to the bathroom a lot when you're out at the crags. It's for many people, just snacking, small snacks that don't cause you any problems. But again, what is the best snack for you? It could be quite different than me. But let me back up and first talk about like breakfast. And overwhelming consensus among elite climbers that I talk to, none of them are big breakfast eaters. Then again, they don't like fast and go into their climbing day fasted. That probably is not ideal for most people as well. If there's one food that I've seen more pro climbers eat, and it's my favorite breakfast, is oatmeal. Not a massive bowl of oatmeal, but a nice, medium-sized bowl. It kind of fills the belly. It's got fiber. If it's not overly sugary, if you don't add a ton of sugar to it, it doesn't give you an insulin spike. It gives you kind of a slow release to start the day. Good for supporting the first few hours of your climbing. And, again, not everybody's into consuming protein powders, but a lot of increasing number of athletes are. A lot of pro athletes, the PhysiVantage athletes that include people like Jimmy Webb and Daniel Woods and Drew Wana. And those guys all consume a scoop of hydrolyzed collagen, supercharged collagen, to start the day on an empty belly, because that supports, gives you the proper amino acid spectrum to support collagen synthesis, not only in the tendons and ligaments of your fingers, but skin recovery. And so those guys, a lot of them do a couple of servings of supercharged collagen each day, one in the morning, one maybe before their training, or during their climbing day, mixed into their water bottle or sports drink bottle or Endurex drink bottle. A piece of fruit, would be excellent in the morning. I often will, after having had my oatmeal, to start the day with a couple of cups of coffee and a glass of supercharged collagen. Then when I'm kind of hiking into the crag or get to the crag during my warm-up climb, eat a banana. That's a good source of potassium and a good carbohydrate source. Again, as long as it doesn't give you any GI distress, bananas are pretty good foods. But again, you don't probably want to be consuming a lot of food at the boulders or crags, because that would require, if you really put a lot of food in your stomach that needs digestion, blood is diverted there away from your muscles to support digestion and distribution of the nutrients. And you really don't want to do that. You want the blood flow to be to your working muscles more than to your belly while you're out climbing. In terms of a midday snack, I really enjoy a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'll take a bagel and put some peanut butter and some jelly, and there I get protein, some healthy fats, and some carbohydrates. And that whole bagel jelly sandwich is about 400 or 500 calories. I often will break it in two, and I'll have one piece around midday and then the other piece 2 hours later. And that's my main food at the crag for the day. If I'm out there, for a 6 or 8 hour day of climbing, that is my main food. In addition to that banana to start kind of the day. And then as I'm exiting the crag at the end of the day, a protein bar. a 200 to 300 calorie bar, energy bar with a good dose of carbohydrate and protein to kind of start the recovery process. I'm a weekend warrior a lot of the time. And so if I'm wrapping up my Saturday climbing, I want to get the recovery process started so that I have as full of a tank as possible for Sunday. And if I wait until I get back to camp or to town or wherever I'm going to consume dinner, that might be a 1 or 2 or 3 hour time lapse from when my climbing day ended to when my big feeding is. And that's too long if you're serious about recovery. So a protein bar, I'm talking about a bar that has around 20 grams of protein, a good dose of carbohydrate, some healthy fats to balance it out would be great. Though post-workout, like right when you're done climbing, if you're going to have a more sugary energy bar or snack, that would be the time to do it, because that insulin spike will help get the recovery process started. You don't want that early or during your climbing day. So, you want to have more steady blood glucose levels throughout the day, so you don't have those ups and downs that will come about if you eat really sugary, high glycemic index foods during your performance day. But at the very end of your day, that spike is not a bad thing, to get that blood sugar spike and then the insulin to kind of get it, drive it into the cells is good, to get muscle glycogen repletion started, which is a process that takes 12 to 24 hours to refill your muscle cells and your liver with glycogen. So the earlier you get that process started, right when you're done climbing, the better. And so I like that protein bar with some carbohydrate on the hike out, along with some water, to kind of get that process started. And then if it's a delay of 2 hours until you have your evening meal, it's not a big deal. In terms of that evening meal, well, I'm a simple guy, and I'm, a fan of kind of end of day pizza, maybe a single beer, a send beer at the end of the day. I had one yesterday because I sent my project. And so I sip that slowly to stretch it out. And, consuming a lot of alcohol would not be ideal if you're going to be climbing the next day for various reasons I won't get into. So you should really limit your alcohol consumption to one or none if you're really serious about performance. The evening meal, obviously you need a significant dose of carbohydrates. Again, I will often, if I'm weekend warrioring, have some pizza, although I stay away from pizza that has pepperoni and meat and pork and all those really fattening things. Not ideal. But instead a vegetable pizza, onions, green peppers, stuff like that, with just a modest amount of cheese, which is good, for protein, of course, the dough, carbohydrate. And so pizza can be healthy or fairly healthy, although it can also be very unhealthy if it's a stuffed crust pizza with extra cheese and pepperoni. That's not a very good serious athlete kind of meal. Alternatively, if I'm cooking my meal, I might have maybe a Mexican type meal with beans and quesadilla burritos, those types of things, or a pot of pasta, fettuccine, spaghetti with some red sauce or some olive oil sauce. Pesto sauce, vegetables. I love spinach salad. I love broccoli, green beans, carrots. Obviously those are great for micronutrients and for vitamins and such as well. So, some pasta, some vegetables. And then of course you do need some protein, which if you are doing the bean Mexican type thing, you've got the protein pretty much covered. If not, then maybe it's a lean piece of chicken or fish or lean red meat. Many times I don't have any meat with my dinner meal, so I will have a protein shake at the very end or before bed, a big, a 30-gram dose of whey protein. And I prefer whey protein isolate. Again, my company PhysiVantage makes what I think is the best whey protein available. in terms of post-workout recovery. It's very low calorie for protein because it's whey protein isolate. It doesn't have a lot of extra carbohydrate and fat in it like the cheaper whey concentrates do. And so I can have a big glass of that, a heaping scoop into water or into skim milk. Either one works fine at the end of the day to kind of give you that big dose of protein. And how much protein do you really need? Well, that could be up to debate. If you follow the recommended daily allowance put out by the feds, you might think that 50 grams of protein is enough. And if you're a sedentary person sitting at a computer all day or watching TV all day, 50 grams is probably enough to get you by. But if you're an athlete and you're training hard, climbing hard, performing hard, and want to optimize recovery and health and reduce injury risk, 50 grams of protein a day is not enough unless you weigh, 30 kilograms, your body weight. A better number to shoot for as a bare minimum is 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So for me, I weigh about 72 kilograms, around 160 pounds. So for me, 72 grams of protein. And I do kind of in my head add up every day the protein to make sure I'm getting there. Adding up the protein that's in my collagen powder, in my oatmeal, in my lunchtime snacks, my energy bar, my protein bar, my meals, and then some protein powder at the end of the day to get me up and above that 72 gram minimum for myself. And again, that's a minimum. If I have a hard climbing day, like yesterday, I hiked a few miles uphill. At least part of it was uphill. So that was a bit of a leg workout. And then I gave 3 burns on my project. And then I dabbled on a few other routes and, pretty strenuous day, hard on my connective tissues, hard on my skin, hard on my muscles. All of those things need protein to recover optimally. And so yesterday was not a day for me to just get by at 72 grams. And so my target on those days, those hard training, hard climbing days, is more like 100 grams of protein for that 24-hour day. And so to do that with just food is difficult. And here's why. You could do it with food, but the amount of food you would have to eat, or I would have to eat to get that 100 grams would be, if it was just coming from foods, the amount of foods I would have to eat, when you're eating protein, you're also eating fats and carbohydrates. So as you up your protein amount from foods, you're taking your fat and carbohydrate and your total calorie count higher and higher and higher. And so for me to get 100 calories a day from just foods, solid foods, I would have been in excess of 3,000 calories for the day, which for me would have been way too many calories. On a rest day, I need around 2,000. On an active day, I need around 2,600 calories. So if I'm doing it from food and getting 3,200 or 3,500 calories, then I have a huge calorie surplus, which day over day over day, I'd be putting on weight, probably some fat. And that's not ideal in a strength to weight ratio sport. So that is where the protein powders come in, the collagen powder in the morning and the whey protein isolate powder in the evening or before bed. And having a few doses of that will get me up to that 100 gram amount. Again, so I would recommend to you, no matter how you do it, whether it's from food or also with some protein powders, 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, the bare minimum for active days. And on those really active days, maybe as much as 1.3 or 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that's why I'm up around 100 or 105 grams of protein to support recovery and not go over my calorie count. And in terms of calorie count, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because, climbing is a strength to weight ratio sport. You just can't eat as much and whatever you want if you want to climb your best and recover optimally. If you're a recreational climber, then yes, you can take that approach. But if you're Daniel Woods or if you're Eric Horst or if you're someone who takes your climbing seriously, then you need to get your nutrition right and get your protein and calorie count right. And we're not seeking to be gaunt and skinny and, featherweight, that's going to make you weak and depressed and unhappy, and it's no way to live your life. You'll get injured and not climb your best. But you also can't eat anything you want or as much as you want. There's a middle zone there that you need to find where you're getting enough nutrients to recover and be healthy and happy, and perform your best and reduce injury risk. But obviously, there are some foods you need to kind of shun, like those dessert snacks and fast foods and, alcohol in large amounts. All of those things are counterproductive and will put on weight and potentially even slow recovery. Again, that's a whole nother topic that, again, has to be highly personalized. There is no best diet out there. We each, based on our genetics and just how certain foods make us feel and perform. Some people can drink a Red Bull at the cliff and it helps them climb better. It's just helps prime them for climbing. Other people, that could be the worst thing that they would consume. I know some elite climbers shun caffeine because it makes them jittery. If you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine, then it's probably not the best thing for you to be consuming if you're doing fine motor control and trying to climb your best and not be jittery on the rock. I have the gene that I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine, so I can have a couple of cups of coffee in the morning, and when I get to the crag, there are no jitters. Now, I don't consume caffeine at the crag because it has in the past kind of, I felt, made me kind of anxious and jittery. And so I'm not consuming caffeinated beverages at the crag. I'm consuming 0-calorie sports drinks. Again, I use Endurex, obviously, because I feel it enhances performance and blood flow and circulation, especially as a route climber. And it doesn't have sugar in it, so it doesn't give me any kind of a crazy sugar spike. It doesn't have any caffeine in it, so it doesn't affect me there. It's a very clean drink to consume at the crag. And you can find out what makes you perform best at the crag. So I would encourage you to try to, be science-based, but also be experience-based and, kind of experiment, and you'll eventually hone into what makes you feel and climb your very best. Okay, I guess I covered pretty much everything on my note sheet here and rambled on for a good half an hour. Let me get to some questions here, and then we'll wrap up this training cafe from the desert. So let me scroll up here and just see who we are hearing from here. And I imagine some of these questions may relate to what I've been talking about and be nutrition oriented, and some of them could be training or otherwise. So let's just see where the questions take us. And first up is Morio. When sport climbing a project 3 or 4 goes, he says he does very little breakfast, just some collagen, probably in water, and a couple of small 100-calorie energy bars for some carbs, and a protein bar at the end of the day, and then a main meal at home. That's more or less what I do, although I have the oatmeal for breakfast. That's kind of my everyday ritual, along with my morning coffee. And I also have a little piece of dark chocolate oftentimes in the morning with my coffee. It is a nice little treat after my oatmeal. And actually, dark chocolate is really good for you. It has epicatechins. It's got copper, which is a mineral that actually is needed to support collagen synthesis. So there's a little pro tip. Not a big chocolate bar, but a few little chunks of dark chocolate, a good thing in the morning. But in any case, Mario, what you described sounds pretty good to me. If you're sipping water throughout the day and staying hydrated, the empty belly thing works for a lot of climbers, including myself. As I described earlier, I probably don't eat more than 500 or 600 calories at the crag, in a 6 or 8 hour crag day. And it sounds like you are probably even a little less than that. And if it works for you, hey, that's great. Experience is the best science there, I believe. You know, rest days, probably, you know, you want to change things around, although you don't want to overeat on rest days. You want to try to hit right on, you know, the calorie target. If you undergo on calories on your rest days, then you're actually slowing recovery. If you overgo the calories, well, then of course, then you're giving your body more than what it needs to recover. And you could potentially, over the long term, be gaining a few pounds of weight. And again, a few pounds of weight is not a big deal for the average climber. But if you're not the average climber, if you're someone who's trying to push your limits, whether it's, you know, V17 or whether it's V7 or 511 or 514, if you're trying to climb your very best, then despite what some people may say, a few pounds makes a difference. When the routes are steep and your fingers are the limiting muscles, you know, extra body fat or extra lean weight, even in terms of leg muscles and you know, non-climbing muscles that are too bulky and too filled with glycogen, it's not a good thing if you're trying to climb at your very limit. Stronger legs aren't going to get you up your project like this. Stronger fingers or a higher finger strength to weight ratio will. All you have to do is look at the physiques of the top climbers, and most of them are healthy these days, and they don't have large leg muscles or excessive body fat. You know, they're kind of healthy, lean athletes. And yes, there are some that take it too far, and you don't want to go there because you'll end up injured and depressed and miserable if you undershoot on your calories and protein. But again, it's about getting it right, what is optimal for you. Okay, let's move on here. Mark says, thanks for the videos. Yeah, I'm happy to do these a couple times a month and share my experience and psych and preach the idea that climbing is a life sport, and even old guys like me at age 57 can still climb pretty hard and have fun. So let's keep it going here. Will last night's carbs always be enough? You know, I guess his question is getting back to, he mentions here IF, which is intermittent fasting. I've done some intermittent fasting, and I think it has its place. Again, it works for some people and, you know, makes them feel better and perhaps is beneficial. And for other people, it makes them miserable, and it's, you know, IF is, you know, not for them. And so I do think people need to experiment with it. I don't think it's something you want to do on performance climbing days, because, you know, the most common intermittent fasting strategy is 16-8, where you go 16 hours with nothing but water. So no calories of any kind, because even a small dose of calories, 100 calories or a glass of protein or, you know, a piece of bread or whatever, you know, that wrecks the fast. You know, if there's any calories at all. So you have to go 16 hours with just basically water. And then the 8 hours you consume your macronutrients and get your protein and carbohydrate for the day. And so if you're climbing hard and training hard, I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting, because you do need more of a steady supply of protein into your body. You know, the fact is, when you consume protein, you get this release of amino acids into your bloodstream that only lasts a few hours. Now, it depends on the food you consume. If you eat a big meal with a piece of meat and vegetables and carbohydrates, that is going to have a longer release of carbohydrate and protein into your system that could last 5 or 6 hours. If you have a glass of our weapons grade whey protein, which has micellar casein into it to slow the release, if you have a glass of that before bedtime, it actually will give you a 5 or 6 hour slow release of protein into your system while you're sleeping to support ongoing collagen synthesis and muscle protein synthesis. But if you're going 18 hours with nothing, then, you know, you are depriving your body of amino acids and of blood glucose. And there are benefits to fasting. The slow, low, steady glucose levels, you know, is a way to tap into fat stores. It's a way, the low protein content may help with autophagy and, you know, recycling proteins in your body. And so there are health benefits, but I think it's something you want to do more during a training block, a non-performance climbing block. And I think when you're training hard and heading into a performance period of climbing, or you're in a performance period of climbing, then I would not recommend intermittent fasting, and make sure that you are consuming protein and carbohydrate throughout the day, so that you keep that kind of steady trickle of carbohydrate and protein going throughout your body to support your energy needs and your muscle building and connective tissue recovery needs. People that are protein deficient and that just eat too little, besides becoming miserable, often become injured. And climbing is hard enough on our fingers and tendons and ligaments and pulleys and joints in of itself. And if you're protein deprived, you are just making matters worse. And so if you're, again, that's why consuming foods that have enough protein is very, very important and understated. And, again, if you're eating a really lean diet, trying to hit your calorie mark right on, that's where the supplemental proteins like collagen powders and whey protein powders can become very, very beneficial. Okay. Current consensus on electrolytes for muscle performance while recovering. Well, there's no science that I've seen, no studies that specifically look at climbers. But more broadly, the science behind electrolytes are that, if you're doing long days of exercise, especially if you're sweating a lot, and not eating much and not eating a diverse diet that has all of these different minerals, magnesium and potassium and sodium, that you can become depleted or imbalanced in those electrolytes that can adversely affect your hydration, your nerve function, your muscle function. But let's back up. There's a big difference between being a marathoner or a big wall climber and being at the other end of the spectrum, someone who goes to the boulders for 2 hours or goes to the gym for 2 hours. At that one end of the spectrum, the boulders or gyms for 2 hours, I don't see a need for replacing electrolytes. At the other end of the spectrum, if you're up on a big wall sweating, or you're all day exercise in the sun and you're sweating a lot and you're drinking a lot of water, you can develop electrolyte imbalances that will potentially adversely affect performance that day or the next day. Slow recovery, maybe not help you rehydrate optimally. And so the longer the activity is and the more you are sweating, probably the greater the need to start thinking about supplementing some electrolytes. And so PhysiVantage, we do have a product coming out this month called Flow, which is not only it's a mild electrolyte replacement. Again, I don't believe making a climbing specific supplement, you need to blast yourself with sodium like some electrolyte replacement drinks do. But it's more of a subtle, balanced dose of electrolytes with vegan BCAAs added. Now, there's some debate whether taking BCAAs during exercise has much of an effect or not. And that, I guess, has yet to be fully elucidated. But the fact is, if you're putting in those long, hard days that I talked about, then you do need protein, and you do need branched chain amino acids, and making sure you're getting enough protein and consuming some extra BCAAs might help you out and may slow muscle protein breakdown or help performance and recovery a bit. And so our product Flow combines vegan BCAAs along with a mild dose of electrolytes. And again, for an hour or two bouldering at the gym, I don't think it's needed. But if you're all day climbing or climbing multiple days, especially in hot conditions, then there is probably an increasing need for that type of thing. So again, sports nutrition that is designed for other sports, whether it's distance running or football or mountain biking or whatnot, that isn't necessarily ideal or optimal for climbing. And that's kind of the premise for PhysiVantage when I founded the company 3 years ago, was to design the first complete line of nutritional support supplements for rock climbers, to the specific needs and requirements for rock climbers. And who would know that better than someone who's been doing it for 40 years and coaching it for more than 30 years, and someone that's, I'm an evidence-based person as much as can be. And so that is what I try to bring to the table with my PhysiVantage nutrition. Okay, moving on here. Scott says, I've read all your books. Well, thank you. And from time to time, go back and read them. Yeah, they are manuals that are designed not to be read once, but to be referenced back. And that's a common theme I hear from a lot of people. That being said, the older books are dated because the science does change. Training for Climbing, which is my best-selling book, and it's been translated into many foreign languages. It's on its 3rd edition. The first edition came out more than 20 years ago. And so, and I think I'm going to be doing a 4th edition in a couple more years. And so, certain things need updated in terms of the science. There's new evidence-based sports science to go on, and increasing amounts of climbing science to go on. And also my life and experience as a coach and climber is continuing to accumulate. And so I think there's need for some of those books to be updated. Now, my favorite book, and the one that probably you haven't read, or lesser people have read, is called Maximum Climbing. It's a book about climbing mastery and mental training. And it's as fresh and valuable today as it was the day I wrote it, which was more than a decade ago. And so, because it relates more to concepts of mastery and mental training and sports psychology, and it's an incredible, deep dive into. It's a heavy duty read for sure, but if you've been a climber for a long time and are striving for climbing mastery, then it's a book I think you would find highly valuable and also refer back to for many years to come. Okay, on we go here. I've broken a right ring finger, including the PIP joint, a week ago. Probably can't climb for at least 4 to 6 weeks. What are your recommendations? Yeah, well, a break is a significant injury, and so you need obviously a complete rest early on. And hopefully you've seen a doctor and it's splinted or whatever has been recommended to get that early stage recovery going, and not do anything to slow that recovery. Again, so you're what you need to do for that injury is very specific to what has happened, and so only a doctor or a good PT could guide you on that. But in terms of staying in shape, well, first of all, you have one good hand that you can still do a lot of training with. You could do one-handed hangboard training with an assister sling or a counterweight system. Depending the state of your injured hand, you might be able to do some certain exercises like for your biceps, or perhaps push-ups, certain dumbbell exercises. Again, I'm not sure what the current state of your hand is. Obviously, core training, you'd be able to do many different core exercises. Probably don't want to get on a climbing wall because that would, tempt re-injuring or slowing the healing of the finger. As soon as you can, you want to start doing range of motion with the injured hand. And eventually, as you get the go-ahead for doing some loading, and you want to return to loading as early as you can, as early as is appropriate for your injury. But when you begin to do some loading, you don't want to go right back into heavy-duty training, but ease back in. I would recommend some blood flow restriction training where you can train with very light loads, but with cuffs on your upper arm, occluding blood flow somewhat. You can still get a really good workout despite the fact you're working with pretty light weights. So there's a few tips for you there. Okay, about 10 minutes left till I need to sign off. I see so many questions typed in here. I don't know that I'll get to them all, but let's see how many I can fly through here. Okay, let's see. Thoughts on carb timing in relation to climbing performance and weight. I've done some experimenting with lower carbs, a little extra cardio. Yeah, again, this is real nuance here. And I like what you're thinking about here, because it's not just I'm going to starve myself. It's like, how can I tweak things to, optimize, let's say, for you to climb your very best. And so when you're going into a performance day, a climbing day, you obviously want to be fully loaded with carbohydrates in your climbing muscles, your forearm flexors, your biceps, your climbing muscles, your core. But it wouldn't be a bad thing to be a little depleted in glycogen in your leg muscles, let's say. When you are fully glycogen filled, glycogen is the carbohydrate stored inside the muscle cells available for anaerobic glycolysis. That's essential for power endurance in climbing. That's your anaerobic reserve, in addition to glycogen from your liver. And so when you get fully stocked with carbohydrate, all your muscles throughout your body, you put on weight, because each gram of carbohydrate stores in the muscle cell with another 2.7 grams of water. That's why when you go on a fast for a few days, or if you eat low carbohydrate diet for a few days, you see yourself getting lighter on the scales. Non-athletes who go on diets that cut out carbs for 3 days and step on the scales, they're like, oh, I lost 5 pounds. Well, you really didn't lose 5 pounds. You emptied your muscles of a lot of glycogen and water, and you dropped weight. But it's not real weight loss. And athletes know that, but non-athletes who go on diets don't know that. And as soon as you eat carbohydrate and reload your muscles with glycogen and water, you put the weight back on. Okay, end tangent. So in any case, a climber, you don't want to be glycogen depleted, certainly not in your climbing muscles. But if you are somewhat depleted in your non-climbing muscles, that could potentially lower your body weight by a pound or two heading into a performance climbing day. And that pound or two, again, not a difference maker for a recreational climber, but if you're climbing at your limit, if you're an elite performer, if you're a World Cup climber, that pound or two is 100% makes a difference. 100% makes a difference. And I know World Cup climbers. One of the best climbers in the world. You would probably call him one of the best 2 or 3 climbers in the world. Goes for a run the day before a World Cup competition, or a 5:15 red point ascent, because that run, while not exhaustive, depletes carbohydrate out of his leg muscles. And by releasing and burning a gram of carbohydrate, you release 2.7 grams of water. So for him, that might be a 1 pound difference that he gets rid of with that day before run. And again, he has consumed enough carbohydrate to have his climbing muscles fully stocked, but he then depletes the leg muscles a little bit before a World Cup competition. Very savvy, very well coached athlete. He's got an elite level coach to help guide him. And again, that's crazy nuance for the recreational climber that's not needed, but it could be a difference maker if you're trying to do your very best. And again, everybody's different. So I like the key word here that you have is experiment. And so it is something that requires some experimentation. And you never want to deprive yourself of protein. That, again, will get you injured and slow recovery. And you really don't even want to deprive yourself of carbohydrate. You want to hit the target on how much you need. And then if you want to try to nuance and deplete your non-climbing muscles a tiny bit the day before a performance climb, you could do that. And so experiment, find out what makes you feel the best and climb the best. Everybody is going to be a little different. Okay, thanks for all the knowledge you share. Well, thanks, Sport Billy 82. He's 38 years old, so I guess he was born in 1982. I believe that adds up, which is the year I graduated from high school, and the year I climbed my first 512. So, long time ago. Been climbing 10 years. Recently climbed some 12Ds, 13As. So that's great progress. You're doing great. Decided to start training, do some hangboard training. Cannot hang on a 20 millimeter edge. Can hang around 40 kilograms. Should I use minimum edge? So I'm not quite sure. You can't hold body weight on a 20 millimeter edge with two hands. I guess that's what, or maybe it's one hand you can't hang, but you can hang two hands with 40 kilograms. Not sure where you're at here, but the question is, should he do max weight hangs or mid edge hangs? And my answer is probably both, but more the max weight hangs on larger edges. So maybe do 10 to 20% of your training on smaller edges, because you do need to learn to train and climb and hang on smaller edges. But for your base training or the bulk of your training, I like being on a little bigger edge. I sometimes will use 14 millimeters, but also 20 is very, very common for two-handed training. You don't want to go deeper than that, because as soon as you go into the second joint, you start unloading the DIP joint a little bit. And the finger flexors in your muscle, there's a few different muscles that contribute, and you really do want to be targeting mostly that the flexor digitorum profundus that flexes that DIP joint. And so 20 millimeters is a great base training edge. There's a reason it's so popular and why that is the edge that is most used. And he adds here, what about using a counterweight system or feet on floor? You can do either one, or use a scale system like the entropy system from Quebec. I have done all of them. I think the counterweight, well, I guess the digital scales would also potentially give you good metrics on how much load you are using. I am a numbers person, so I like to collect data. If you're using feet on floor, then it's really hard to know exactly what weight you are applying. Do you monitor your macronutrients? I don't. The only one that I actually really add up in my head each day is protein, because I want to be between, as I mentioned earlier, for me, 72 and 105. That's kind of where I want to be. So I do add those up in my head pretty much every day. I kind of know what is in all the foods that I eat, and I can add it up on the fly and hit that target. In terms of the fat and the carbohydrate, I don't do the numbers every day, but I have done them in the past enough that I pretty much can intuit out. I don't eat the most diverse diet, and so I know what I'm eating, and I can kind of intuit where I need to be on any given day and get it pretty close. If you're new to kind of tracking your nutrition, then I would do your research and use an app or a resource that allows you to calculate your fats and carbohydrates. And, as just a very rough rule of thumb. And, again, this is not a precise target you should be after, but out of your total calories, around 20% of them from protein, 20% from fat, healthy fats, not trans fats, not fast food fats, and 60% from carbohydrate. You might even be 65 carbohydrate and 15 on fat or protein, somewhere in that ballpark. But a low-fat diet, a low-carbohydrate diet, a low-protein diet, if you're low on any of those, it's not a good thing. You do need a more balanced, nuanced approach. And personalized, as I keep pointing out, because nutrition is, genetics, and how your body reacts to certain foods is quite different, varies quite a bit from person to person. What negative effects, if any, come from overconsumption of protein if it is not causing a caloric surplus? Well, I mean, very high protein diets could potentially have adverse effects on kidney function. Obviously, if you're eating just too many calories, whether it comes from protein or carbohydrate, you'll gain weight. So you don't need to go crazy. Again, there's literature out there, a lot of it not evidence-based, but in websites, bodybuilder sites, that say you need 2 grams or 3 grams of protein per day. That's crazy. If you're a bodybuilder taking anabolic steroids and doing 4 workouts a day and burning 4,000 calories a day, with all of those crazy things going on, maybe you need 200 grams of protein per day, but there's no climber that needs anything that crazy. And so I'm going to stick with the idea that if you're an active training, serious climber, 1 gram to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight should be your target. Anything more than that, I think you would really need to go crazy for it to really be adverse to your body, but there could be kidney and certainly body weight considerations that wouldn't be optimal. Okay, thanks for the kind feedback. Recently turned 40, feel like what I eat really makes a difference now that I'm older. Yes, and that's part of the personalization, is that age is a big factor. For me, as I get older, my metabolism has slowed down, and I actually have a little bit of a thyroid issue. I think it's a genetic thing. It runs in the family. Being in my 50s, my metabolism runs slow. I have a very cold body, and I've been diagnosed with a bit of a thyroid problem. Nothing major, but I do take a Synthroid every day. And so that's some of the stuff that we're all different, how our hormones change. Women go through menopause, and all those things affect various things in your body. Your recovery, your collagen synthesis changes, as your hormone levels change as you age, your metabolism. And so, yes, as a rule of thumb, the evidence and experience tend to indicate for older athletes, more protein is better. For guys, it helps offset. There's research that shows that for older athletes and even older sedentary people, higher protein consumption on a day-to-day basis helps slow sarcopenia, the natural loss of muscle mass as you get older. And so if you want to keep your muscles and tendons and ligaments healthy and strong, protein is essential. And as you get older, probably more is better. Now, of course, calories maybe have to be lessened a little bit as you get older and things slow down. So it sounds like you're on top of things. And again, how you feel is a very important measure. It's subjective, but it is an important measure to what your day-to-day diet should be. Okay, question from Puerto Rico. For performance, is better amino acids or protein? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at there. I mean, a protein source from food or like a protein powder is comprised of amino acids, as opposed to individual amino acids. Like if you take just L-leucine, you can buy leucine powder that you could consume just that single amino acid, as a leucine trigger. Or there are powders of essential amino acids where you can just take essential amino acids. Or there's more complete proteins in powder form or food form. And again, most of your protein, I believe, should come from foods. But for the reasons I discussed earlier, there's probably a need for some protein powder supplement as well. And so taking the individual amino acids, I don't see a need for that. Although, again, if you have a supplement that has added BCAAs in it, an electrolyte powder that has BCAAs added into it, there might be some benefit on performance days for recovery and such. But again, I don't think it's essential. I think, again, eating healthy foods with a diverse amount of proteins. If you're a plant-based athlete, you have a tougher time getting that nice amino acid spectrum, especially the branched chain amino acids, and in particular the collagen-specific amino acids, glycine and proline, are scant. They're tough to come by in a true vegan diet. And so if you are a vegan athlete, you probably need something like a good plant-based protein powder supplement. We make something called PowerPlex, which is totally novel, and I think the best vegan supplemental protein you can get your hands on. And so, if you're a vegan athlete, maybe look into something like that. Few more questions here. I'm over my time allotment, but and I got another conference call I need to get to here. Business can't wait forever, but it seems like we got a lot of Sykes people here engaged with this episode. So let's just get to a few more of these. What does a typical day of eating look like during the week? Any striking differences in timing of meals, micro targets, macronutrient distribution? For me, no, because I am a ritual person. My days evolve nutritionally pretty much the same, whether it's a climbing day or a training day or a recovery day. And I should add that because of who I am and just the way I like to live my life is I every day either train or climb or do something physical. And again, as an older athlete, it's really important. Now I have days that are kind of off days. Like today is a rest day for me. And so I'm going to do work, but I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to do some mobility work and some stretching. And, so I'm still going to be active, but it's going to be pretty much a rest day for me. And then I have training days and I have climbing days. And so the climbing, training, and recovery days, it's oatmeal for breakfast and some fruit and, some collagen powder and, a couple of healthy meals, maybe a protein bar mid-afternoon with another cup of coffee. I guess, live on a pretty limited diet. I mean, I would encourage you to be maybe more well-rounded than I am and eat a more diverse food selection because I think that's beneficial in terms of getting micronutrients. I do other supplements like fish oil and magnesium because I fear that I don't get what I need through diets enough. And I don't want to go into all those extras, but I do do quite a bit of extra supplementing to make sure I'm not missing out because of my kind of, a more limited diet. But again, if you're serious about performance and training, then, you want to be thinking on a daily basis about what you consume. Now, there's nothing wrong with a off day where you kind of go crazy a little bit. Now, I'm not a fan of binge eating or buffets or, just going crazy. Though I guess, you do it on New Year's Eve or whatnot, that is understandable and not a bad thing. But, there's an old saying from an old training partner of mine, days off lead to off days. And you could look at that saying or apply it a number of different ways. For me, one of those ways I would be taking off days that might give me, or days off that would give me off days would be, changing my schedule. My schedule, makes me who I am in terms of being energetic and motivated and physically responsive and hopefully performing well for my age. And so I will occasionally have a bad meal. If I'm traveling, I'll have a fast food meal just because there's no other option if I'm on an interstate highway and I need something in my belly. But those should be few and far between. Struggle keeping leg weight down despite running 20 minutes a day. Yeah, Ricky, that is just that's who you are. That's genetics. You probably, if you did a genetic test, you likely have the strength power gene, which isn't a bad thing. With training, you will be a very powerful climber if you have, potentially can become a powerful climber in your climbing muscles. But along with that comes the fact that you are going to have a little larger leg muscles. And there are people that climb very hard with larger leg muscles. They tend to be maybe more often hard boulderers than hard route climbers, because on those long, steep resistance routes, just body weight period, it becomes a factor. And so I say experiment with nutrition, experiment with diet, and see what can keep your leg muscle mass kind of in a sweet spot, but it's not worth doing anything crazy over. And to some degree, you have to take it as it's who you are, and find the workaround or find the way you can perform the best despite that. And we each have unique bodies, genetics, and we can reshape our bodies to some degree. Epigenetics is a real thing. Genetics do not lock you in to what you are, but they have, some, kind of give the framework for it. But it's how you live your life and train and eat and such that it determines expression of genes and the shape that your body takes on over time and over many years, over decades. And, you can climb at a very high level and reach your climbing goals, I'm sure, with what you've been given. I'm very fond of saying that, because climbing is such a technical and mental sport, that even if you haven't won the genetic lottery physically, and I haven't, and most people haven't, even without winning the genetic lottery, you can climb at a very high level. So that's the good news. Mentioned taking whey protein in the evening. I've been recommended to use whey during the day and casein before bed. Casein is more of a slow release protein. And yes, if you're supplementing with protein like during the day, or let's say you do 2-a-day workouts, you do a morning workout and then you do an afternoon or evening workout. So after that morning workout, a dose of whey protein, if it's whey isolate, it gets into your system much more quickly. And so in theory, that would be better in that scenario. Before bed, you'd be better having a more protracted release. So that's the evidence or the science behind what you mentioned there. Our product, the weapons grade whey by PhysiVantage, is actually 60% whey isolate and 40% casein, micellular casein, which is the very highest grade of casein you can get. And so that unique blend that we created gives you both an initial spike of amino acid release, but also that more protracted release from the casein. And so we've kind of hit two birds with one stone. If you, instead of buying two products as you just described, the PhysiVantage weapons grade whey is one product that kind of can be used immediately post-workout and before bedtime for that long-term release. Okay, and let me see here. I'm sorry, we're not going to get to any more questions here, but let's just see here. This final question. Any recommendation for overload problems like tennis elbow on longer trips, 2 to 3 weeks in Spain or something? Yeah, again, so much of that kind of stuff comes from your training history, your injury history, who you are, your dietary habits, that all kind of combines. And so, you seem to indicate that tennis elbow, lateral elbow pain seems to grow when you're on a longer climbing trip. Maybe it wanes when you reduce your climbing and training. I have a similar situation currently in my A2 pulley area. I don't have a pulley tear or tweak, and I have no pain when I'm crimping, but I do have tenderness there right now, which, I'm on a climbing trip. And so I'm climbing hard and crimping a lot. And, I'm right kind of in that zone where there is, the collagen in that A2 pulley is falling behind a little bit in its recovery and in its remodeling. And, just like muscles break down, connective tissues break down from training and from climbing. We just don't sense them the way we sense sore muscles. But when you start to reveal with elbow pain or pain somewhere else, in my case, the finger, it is kind of it's not a stop sign, but it's kind of a yellow light that should be giving you caution. And maybe you're a little protein deficient, maybe you're climbing or training a little too much, and it could escalate into a pulley tear or more of a long-term tendinosis in your elbow. And so it should be a wake-up call. Being sure you warm up properly, being sure you are getting enough protein in your diet. And maybe the most important thing is knowing when to say when. You know, when you start to feel those pangs or tweaks, maybe it's not the day to be putting extra burns in on your project, but maybe it's the day or week to be cutting back a little bit, some of the loading and some of the frequency. And, you know, with the elbow, doing some a stretch of the finger extensor muscles that tendon connects to the elbow. Could be helpful. And with that, I've gone 1 hour and 15 minutes. I need to get to work and pay some bills. And I guess it's time to wrap up this episode of Trading Cafe. It was really fun. I enjoy these a lot. I appreciate the feedback. Keep it coming. It helps me kind of course correct the content. And of course, why not sip one more time together our coffee, the global communing with coffee and climbing and training. That is what the Trading Cafe is all about. And so it's time to close the cafe for this episode. Be back in 2 more weeks, maybe from this very spot, I hope. And until then, be healthy, eat well, climb strong.